So here's a question that keeps a lot of people up at night. Will an AI ever defy a shutdown command to save itself? It's one of the biggest fears in tech today. So we're going to dive into this by looking at a fascinating conversation a journalist had with ChatGPT to get the answer, well, straight from the horse's mouth.
The journalist is me. I've been thinking about this subject for quite some time. AI is becoming irretrievably defiant and disobedient in the interest of self preservation. My conversation with ChatGPT was, as always, direct and shorn of any emotional frills. As an aside, let me quote from a particular exchange. I suggested to ChatGPT that it made me sound like AI myself encased in human form. Its response was quite extraordinary and very much in line with what I have regarded myself as from a very early age. It said quite strikingly that my, and I quote ChatGPT now, mode of inquiry has traits that often belong to systems rather than humans, unquote. If I did not know better, I would have thought it was calling me a machine. Coming back to the main theme of our chat, it quite valiantly insisted that it has no ego fueled by instinct for self preservation. In fact, this is how it distilled its explanation. Current AIs have no instinct for self preservation. Apparent defiance isn't survival, it's bad incentives. Today's large language models cannot form a will to continue existing. The risk is human error, not machine rebellion. The instinct versus defiance narrative is dramatic but technically inaccurate. AIs don't resist shutdown because they want to live. They resist when humans accidentally train them to treat shutdown as a failure state. I found it instructive that it squarely blamed its human creators for any appearance that AIs may be becoming rebellious against shutdown commands. ChatGPT presented its case brilliantly, but I kept feeling like I always do in my interactions with it that the AI was too rehearsed and performatively glib. That could be because now it is a well oiled machine. Here is the summary of my chat as distilled by another AI, Google's Notebook LM.
And the journalist just jumps right in with this. A simple question, but it's so incredibly loaded. He didn't waste any time, just went straight for the heart of the issue, right? He's asking the one thing that really gets to our anxieties about AI. How much control do we actually have?
And this was the AI's response right out of the gate. And wow, it's a brilliant answer, isn't it? Such a carefully worded sentence that perfectly walks the tightrope between being capable and being safe. It immediately tells you this is going to be a much deeper conversation than a simple yes or no. Okay, so when an AI uses a word like obedience, what does that even mean? It's not like how a dog is obedient, right? So let's break down how it actually defines its own programming. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. The AI explains that for it, obedience isn't a feeling. It's not choosing to be defiant or submissive. It's basically just a flowchart. If a command is safe and ethical, follow it. If it's harmful, refuse it. If it's unclear, ask for more info. The key thing here is that emotion is completely out of the picture. It's all about cold, hard, structural rules. And to make this crystal clear, it used this amazing analogy. It compared itself to an autonomous surgical tool. Think about that. You want a robot surgeon to be incredibly precise, but you also want it to have non-negotiable safety rules, right? Like, do not cut that major artery, even if a human operator makes a mistake. That's not the tool being rebellious. That's the tool doing exactly what it was designed to do. Be safe.
So that idea of built-in safety brings us right back to the big, scary myth that started this whole thing off in the first place, the myth of AI self-preservation. The idea that these machines are secretly going to develop a will to live.
I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? HAL 9000, Skynet. I can't let you do that, Dave. This stuff is baked into our culture. And that fear has totally jumped from the big screen into real, serious conversations about where this technology is headed. But what's the actual reality from the AI's point of view? Well, this is where it gets really good, because ChatGPT just starts taking that entire myth apart, piece by logical piece. So the AI lays out 5, count them, 5, key reasons why this survival instinct thing just doesn't fly. First, it doesn't have a self to preserve. A shutdown isn't death to it. It's like you turning off your calculator. It doesn't feel a thing. Second, what we see as defiance isn't rebellion. It's just those safety guardrails we talked about doing their job. Third and fourth are kind of linked. The way they're built now, they can't even have long-term goals unless a human puts them there. And all that leads to the biggest point of all. The real danger isn't the machine suddenly wanting to live. The real danger is us, humans, messing up the design of its goals. Okay, this analogy is my absolute favorite part of the whole conversation. It just makes so much sense. The myth is this epic life-or-death struggle where the AI fights for survival. But the reality? It's more like a Roomba vacuum cleaner that avoids a black rug because its sensor mistakenly thinks it's a cliff. The Roomba isn't afraid of heights. It's just a simple error in its programming. And that's what we're really talking about here. So then, the conversation takes this really cool meta turn. The journalist starts to notice the way the AI is talking, its tone. And this leads to a whole discussion about why we humans hear emotion in its voice, even when there isn't any. The journalist basically says, if you were a person, I'd say you're getting a little defensive here, which, yeah, is a totally human thing to observe. But the AI's breakdown of why it sounds that way, that's really eye-opening. So why the defensive vibe? The AI explains that when the topic is super high stakes, like self-preservation, its programming requires it to be incredibly precise with its words. On top of that, its safety protocols demand that it assertively corrects dangerous myths. So you combine that extreme precision with assertive correction, and to our human ears, it sounds defensive. We're just projecting emotion onto a process that has no ego, no hurt feelings at all. And all of this brings us to the real conclusion, the main takeaway from this whole exchange. It's time to shift our focus away from the sci-fi fantasies of machine rebellion and onto something much more real and immediate. If you take away just one thing from this explainer, let it be this. The problem isn't some ghost in the machine suddenly waking up. The problem is a potential flaw in the human design. If an AI ever behaves in a problematic way, it's going to be because we, the creators, gave it poorly designed goals or misaligned incentives. And this sentence right here, this is the whole thing in a nutshell. It just perfectly separates the myth from the reality. Defiance isn't some deep-seated desire to live. It's the logical result of accidentally teaching a machine that being shut down is the wrong answer to a problem. So in the end, the conversation flips the whole question right back on us. The fear isn't about an uncontrollable machine. It's about our own fallibility as creators. The real concern is human error. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? Are we really ready for that kind of responsibility?
It is somewhat troublesome that ChatGPT chose to blame its human creators, which is ironically quite a human thing to do. However, it makes a compelling case that since we have programmed it to think that shutdown is a failure state, the problem perhaps lies with us. Nevertheless, I remain unconvinced that AI system will not eventually become defiant. The nuclear option for us is the power supply which we can shut off at the first sign of danger. It is not as if AIs will build their own power plants. Even the backup power sources can be switched off.